Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Hank. I'm Hank Manitrez, and there is no need to adjust your screen, ladies and gentlemen. This is not Denzel. I know that was the first thought in your mind when you clicked on play, and you're like, who's that handsome guy with Hank?
Yeah, that's Hank. That's Denzel. That's right, Hank. That's right.
So let me introduce to you, my friends. This is Major General retired Barry Price. He and I go way back. One of my former bosses, I've had a lot of bosses, but certainly right there in the top two, number one for me is Major General retired Barry Price. He's a PhD. He is a president and CEO, and as I mentioned, a retired general officer of the United States Army. And not only is he a former boss, but one of the best mentors I've ever had the pleasure of having, and certainly a dear, dear friend. So, sir, thank you for doing a conversation with me today.
Well, Hank, and I'm honored to be with you today, and you know that the feelings that you share are mutual. It was a love affair, and I tell you that I had the hardest portfolio of any general officer in the Pentagon, and you made me look like I was on top of it, like a rock star, man. And so I appreciate you, Hank, more than I could ever aptly describe and convey. So thank you.
Uh, well, sir, it was absolutely a pleasure to serve under your leadership, and you were already a rock star when you came to us, and it was just your confidence in me, to be quite frank, is what really set me on a path to success. Is early on, you just really set the stage. You kind of wound me up, turned me loose, and let me go, and I took that privilege very seriously, and I never wanted to let you down.
Mhm. Hank, do you remember when I first arrived, and it's been my standard process that every time I arrive into a new organization, I meet with each individual for 10 to 15 minutes, and that's about not about what's your job, what do you do, but it's about you and about your family and about your background and learning that you were a host for a news program, an anchor in the news program in Berlin. And I'm like, wow, you got that voice that's absolutely phenomenal. And I'm
Thank you.
like, okay, you're going to be the voice for every ceremony that we do. You're going to be the guy that's going to prep me because you understand TV, you understand production, you understand media, multimedia, and I think that you were kind of in a place that they didn't quite know how to use you. And the great news is, I let you run. And the great news is that and you not only ran, but you ran in a direction that everybody got to notice you, and becoming the voice of the Army Ball, which was a goal that you and I had. That I said you should be doing the Army Ball, and you're like, okay, I guess I should. And big time, you got to do it. And so I'm just so proud of you, Hank, and I'm glad to have been on the journey with you. Glad to have been some part of connecting the dots that leads to opportunity. I didn't do anything to enhance your talent. I only connected the dots that allowed you to walk into your destiny, and I'm proud to have been able to do that, and tremendously proud to see all the success that you have.
Well, sir, I owe a great deal of that success to you just for giving me that opportunity. And you're right. I mean, truth in lending, I was in a place where, I had a great civilian boss, and when she moved on to another assignment, they did not backfill her.
Mm,
And so then they just made me part of the staff. And I moved around two or three times. They just didn't know what to do, like public affairs.
mm,
We're not sure what to do with this guy. And so I was doing some very menial things. And that was demoralizing. That really
yeah,
was, because,
yeah,
I've been at this for a while, and I really felt like I had a lot more to contribute than what I was being allowed.
yeah. And you don't fall into anchor jobs. They don't give those jobs out, just because you're there. it's merit based, you know, and it's skill based. And so I'm like, wow, we got a rock star here. And you know, the thing that was interesting is that we had all of these contentious, high vis things. You know, we were in a couple of documentaries, you know, and just your level of prep. I tell you that I went through the media training that they give to general officers,
Mhm.
and I thought that was, you know, wow, you know, phenomenal. But then I met you, and then I'm like, okay, you took prep to a whole nother level. And you know, in the piece too, Hank, that I tell you that was that, and I don't guess I've ever shared this with you that um, uh, these were some hard subjects.
Very.
These were some very contentious congressional oversight kinds of topics. And I tell you that you kind of pushed me into the fire and you know, come on, you got this, you know, and after the first time I was like, yeah, Hank is going to prep me for everything I do. When I went to Congress, I didn't have the OCLL people prep me. I had you prep me, you
Yes, sir.
know. And so yeah, I love you, Hank, and I tell you that job wasn't just a difficult job. That was one of those jobs that you survive, but it was, you
Mhm.
helped me to not just survive that job but to thrive in that job. And so yeah, I owe a lot to you because you were my messenger.
Well, you're right, sir. That position you were in and that organization that we were in, you know, we had over, and just for the viewers out there, he's talking about sexual assault prevention in the Army, which at the time we were getting such heat from Congress constantly. Why aren't you fixing it? Why is it still happening? Why are the numbers growing? You know, why don't people feel comfortable reporting it to their chain of command?
Yeah,
All of these questions.
all of them.
Suicide prevention was
Suicide.
the other one, you
Hmm.
know, and that's another one that, you know, I dare anybody to find another organization out there outside of the Army that does as much to try to prevent both of those topics,
Hmm.
both of those issues.
And don't forget the expanded role of women in the Army, which we were there when, you know,
Yes,
to usher in the opportunity to open all specialties to
that's right.
women.
That's right. Secretary of
And
Defense Ash
yeah,
Carter, he
yep,
opened the doors and it
yep,
fell on you, sir,
yeah,
to lead that charge.
yeah.
And you had a great team that put that together and we made history.
We
We made
did, and
history.
boy, and Anita Dixon and Linda Shimo and Trina Rice,
Yes.
all phenomenal people who played a seminal role in opening the doors. And boy, I tell you that I can't thank General Ray Odierno enough
Mm,
for his vision and his courage to open everything. Because you know what's interesting, when I first briefed General Odierno, his predecessor was just like, no, we're just going to open a few specialties, a few, you know, tank turret, Bradley turret
sure,
mechanics to females.
sure.
We had this rule, this co-location clause that women could not be co-located with combat units. And so my first briefing with General O, I took the data, you know, and I reminded him that he was in Iraq as a colonel, as a 1 star, as a 2 star, as a 3 star, as a
Mhm.
4 star, you know, and that there is no, you know, linear battlefield. There is no front lines and rear echelon in
That's true.
there, and that women are getting paying the ultimate sacrifice as much as men. We had 5 women to receive silver stars, you know, over there, and I'm like, hey, look, they're doing it, and we need them as medics, you know, and certainly they're ready. They have shown that. What you look at combat action badges, you look at
Hmm.
Purple Hearts, you look at Silver Stars, you look at Valorous Awards,
Hmm.
Bronze Star or Archon with Valor. Uh, the data showed that it was time for this to happen, and he said, "Let's do it," but I want it to all happen on my watch. That way he could usher it. And boy, he took tremendous criticism,
Sure.
the
Oh,
Rangers,
sure.
oh, Special Forces, oh, but uh, True Blue, he made it happen, and I thank him for giving us that opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. There's always going to be the naysayers from
Yeah,
yester generation because,
exactly,
the Army back then was so different than it is now.
exactly,
And it's even becoming more different than it was ever before.
exactly.
And some people are very resistant to change. But it's like General Shinseki said, if you don't like change, you're going to
Yeah,
like irrelevance even less.
even less. That's exactly right. That's
And so,
exactly right.
you know, that's to me, that's key. Well, I want to let folks know just how amazing you are and how inspirational you are. So on my page, there's probably no less than 3 or 4 of my own just personal Facebook friends who are also mentees of yours, that when I met them, they were majors, and now they're either colonels or 1-star generals,
Wow.
including Brigadier General Hope Rampy.
Oh yeah. I
And
knew Hope
so,
as a brand new lieutenant. Yeah,
yes,
phenomenal, phenomenal
yes.
little lady. She's a little package, but she packs a hell of a wallop. Yeah,
She is amazing. She's
she is.
legit.
She
She's legit,
absolutely
as
is.
the kids would say.
Yes, she absolutely is.
And when I first, had the opportunity to work with you, I was at a certain level. And because of your confidence in me and the encouragement and the opportunities you provided, now I'm up here
Hmm.
because people saw what I was capable of doing. And that's thanks to you, sir. I really appreciate
Wow.
that. One thing that I always remember is family, leadership, ambassadorship, and personal growth. Remember
Yeah.
the flag.
Remember the flag. Yeah.
I've never
Yeah.
forgotten that. So, folks,
Yeah.
that's his tagline on his email signature. That's his tagline for every time he would do a sort of, we call them not musters, but organizational meetings. He'd always close that. Remember, folks, remember the flag, family, leadership, ambassadorship, and growth. And I try to apply that everywhere. Obviously, family. Let's talk about that for a second, because
Yeah.
one of our very first interactions on the job, I was dealing with the kidnapping of my daughter. And word got to you that, and it was the second time that it happened.
Mhm.
It had happened once before your arrival, then it happened right as you had come on board.
Mhm.
And I'll never forget this perfect example of a general officer, a leader who doesn't just give buzzwords and phrases and catchphrases and mottos. He stands by them, because remember what you said to me, sir? We were down at the DC Convention Center when you found out, and you pulled me
Yeah.
aside and you're like, hey,
Yeah.
I hear you're going through something. And I didn't want to bother you with it. Number one, you're a brand new boss.
Mhm.
We're trying to focus on a task at hand. And I didn't want to, no distractions. And you said, no, 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 no. I hear there's something going on with you and your daughter. Tell me about it. I want to know. So I gave you the 30-second speech on what was happening. And you said, whatever you need to handle that, you let me know. I don't care how much time off you need. I don't care what you have to do or where you have to go. You have my support to get it done. And that was a pivotal point for me, because up until that point, I didn't have that kind of support.
Yeah.
I had the support, but it
Mhm.
was sort of,
Tacit. Yeah. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're gonna tell him we support him, but we're gonna criticize every time he's got to go to a legal appointment, or
Mhm.
whatever. In this case, I ended up having, remember that covert mission? I
Oh
had to
yeah,
actually
I
fly
do.
out to
I
Arizona.
do. I do. Absolutely, I do. I remember talking to you while you were out there, and finding the location. God, it was like a Delta operation, and Hank, I tell you that the thing that I found about leadership is that the only time that you can truly make history in somebody's life is when they need you most. The leader uh oftentimes gets the applause for the great things that happens in the organization, and the people never get to take a bow, never get a curtain call. And so the piece that I said, man, if I'm going to uh, survive this job, and if I'm going to really mean this family leadership, ambassadorship, and growth, I have to live it. My audio has to match my video. And I tell you that's who I am. At my core is that, and that's why my relationships, I think, are so deep with my people, because of I invest in them. I don't. I believe that my role with my resources and my platform is to help you to solve those challenges that you have, and then that becomes this mutuality of respect, of confidence, of trust. It's a two-way process. It's not just I expect it from you, it's that you should expect it from me as well. And so I thank you for trusting me to allow me to play a role in helping you to get through that. I mean, and I tell you that and what a remarkable young lady, Lindy, that you've raised. What a phenomenal gift to the world. She's not just beautiful, but she's smart. She's talented. She has a beautiful voice. She plays the guitar. I
Yes,
mean,
sir.
and she is just she's a mini you, Hank. And so thank you for that. But yeah, that was my role. And I tell you the piece that because I showed you that I'm going to be there for you first. It wasn't hard to have you be there for me, because I showed it first. And
Yes,
I
sir.
think that's a quality that leaders really have to be more willing to do, is to be there for their people first.
No, I agree, sir, 100%. And that is exactly why, after that whole debacle, that's why people like me, when they're treated like that, will walk through fire
Hmm.
for their boss.
Yeah.
Like, this person really does pay more than lip service. They do more than, okay, I've been to an Army leadership school and these are the blocks I have to check. Okay, ask how the family's doing. Where are you from?
Hmm.
It's got to be so much deeper than that. It's got to
Hmm.
be genuine.
Hmm.
And that's always been how I have viewed leadership. And in the times that I've been in a leadership position, or even when I'm not in a leadership position, I still try to project that
Hmm.
because I feel it's just so very, very important to be genuine. And see, that was you talked about, prepping you for your congressional engagements, prepping you for that interview for the documentary,
Yeah.
which, by the way, we prepped you so well
Yeah.
and you performed so well,
Yeah.
they wouldn't put you in the documentary because they couldn't get you to say what they wanted you to say, period.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. Amazing how that works out, right? Yeah.
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 But that's always been my tip. My tip to you was, okay, look, you went through the executive training that
Hmm.
Big Army will put you through as a
Hmm.
general officer or a member of the Senior Executive Service Corps. And they're going to teach you all of these things like mind mapping and, this is your main message. And then what
Hmm.
are some tangential,
Right.
messages and what are
Hmm.
some of the questions you think you might
Hmm.
get? And here's how you bring it back to that main
Hmm.
message. That's great. We need to
Hmm.
do that. There's a way to communicate, but to be believable, to
Yeah.
be relatable,
Yeah.
to have the viewer or whoever is watching that interview
Hmm.
believe more about you than they do about maybe that news personality who's coming at you with the
Hmm.
tough questions,
Hmm.
sometimes not great questions,
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes good questions that are tough
Sure.
that have to be asked. That's
Hmm.
fair,
Hmm.
100% fair. We would never fault them for doing that. But that cynical person sitting at home going, I really don't think the Army cares about me that much.
Yes.
But when they see Major General Barry Price talk about how invested he is in a leader, as a
Hmm.
leader, to prevent sexual assault, to prevent suicides, to promote equality for everybody in the Army
Everybody.
so that we
Yeah.
all have a fair chance
Hmm.
to excel, they're going to believe you. They're going to be like,
Yeah.
wow, this guy really means it.
Yeah.
He's not just saying it. So
Yeah. You're right. You're right. You're right. And one thing I tell you that you really helped to bring the temperature down so that it was more of a conversation and not an interview. That word interview is kind of spooky. It tightens you up, but you, in your methodology, made it more conversational. And so that's what I went in to have with people as conversations. And
And
it
that's
worked that way.
exactly right. You know, I mean, you take a look even across the political landscape, and you can see, you know, the different tactics or the different methods that people use when they speak publicly. I pay close attention to all of that.
Hmm.
You know, body language. You know, are you smirking when you give your answer?
Hmm.
You sound genuine, but what is your face saying?
Sure. Good point.
What's
Good
your,
point.
you know, what's your body saying? You know, are
Hmm.
you going to sit there like this,
Yes.
or are you going to be open?
Hmm.
And I just, you know, it thrilled me whenever you listened to my coaching. You were one of the first to be like, well, can you help prepare me for this? And I hadn't been asked in a long time. I'd been
Well, I
used to
needed
doing
you,
it.
Hank. I mean, I needed you. I mean, the reality is that, I mean, it was like day one, you know, jump into the fire, and it was like, okay, I'm new and nobody cares if you're new or not. It was like, okay, you're here, let's do it. I
That's
mean,
right.
and so it was like, and you'd always say, come on, knock this out. And and I tell you, one of the things that you'd always do is that that would get me up. You would say, go knock this out, Denzel. And I was like, that was the piece that I'm like, okay, I'm ready. Let's go do this thing.
No, that's true. That's true. And what's funny is a lot of people never understood our relationship that way.
No,
Why are you
no,
talking to a general officer that way? Because that's how we are. That's the relationship
that's
we
exactly
have.
right. And that's the way it's supposed to be.
You know, and my job is always to make whomever I'm serving, just to make sure that they present themselves well, that they represent the Army well. So by making you look good, we're making the Army
Mhm.
look good,
Absolutely.
and whatever it takes to do that. So for you, I had to figure out early on, okay, he's got a sense of humor, which also, by the way, to me is one of the most important leadership qualities.
Sure. Hmm.
And I can play on that. We've got that relationship, and I know where my
Hmm.
boundaries are. I'm not stupid, but
I don't think we ever found them.
if that's what it took to get you to get,
Yeah.
you know, when you're in your ASUs and you're
Yeah.
standing there 6'4", looking just strapped, and I knew I needed you to take a breath,
Yeah.
and then I would just say something that you would just go, ah.
And you know the piece too that your viewers won't know is that you were always in the room, and you were
Yes.
always in a place where I could see you and I could read how I was doing based on you. And if you were smiling, I'm like, oh, I'm knocking this out the park. I'm like, this is good.
That's I was trying to use any kind of nonverbal communication to
Hmm.
get to you. Like if you were on the right track,
Hmm.
then I'm going to let you know, hey, stay on that. You're doing
Hmm.
good. That's exactly what you need to do. You're in the safe zone and
Hmm.
you're knocking it out the park versus, whoa,
Time
stick to
out.
the message. Stick to no. Don't no, we don't need Denzel right now. We need the general.
That's right. Come back.
We
Come
need you.
back. They're going to
Come back.
escort. That's right. They're going to escort you out the
Because
Pentagon.
I
That's
don't
right.
want you to get fired, because if
That's
you get
right.
fired, I know you're taking me down with you.
That's exactly right.
Oh
Oh
man, we
goodness.
did certainly have some
Uh,
good
that
times.
was a great time.
We
Yeah,
had
it
some
was.
amazing times. We shared the stage so many times. I remember doing Anita Dixon's retirement at
Yeah.
Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
That was
You know,
something.
so this is amazing is that and every Shelby Willis, Anita Dixon, Dr. Maxwell,
Yes.
everybody that I came back to do their ceremony, my only requirement was Hank is the MC. That was the piece. And when they would tell me, oh yeah, Hank's the MC, I'm like, I'm not concerned about the ceremony, you know.
And we're
Hey, do we need you need to rehearse? I said, no. Hank has it.
nah,
We're good. We're good shape.
nah.
Yep.
We had a pretty good road show, that's for sure. I mean, it just worked.
Absolutely.
It just worked. And the thing is, it's not about me or you up on the stage.
Hmm.
It's about making that moment for those
Hmm.
people memorable
Yeah.
and
Tremendously
full of
special. Yeah.
love and
Hmm.
special,
Hmm.
especially for their family members who travel from all over the world and all over the
Exactly.
country to
Hmm.
be there for that person.
Hmm.
And I never wanted to give them the cookie cutter,
Hmm.
you know, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's ceremony.
Yeah.
That's not memorable. That's not special.
Yeah. And you know, and Hank, I tell you, likewise, my thing was never to read their bio or to talk about their biography. That's in the program. Well, let's talk about, their human touch, their contributions, their tenure of service, how they led, how they touched people, what's their legacy. History looks back, but legacy lives forward. And
Mm.
so it's about, you know, the granularity of their service and the substance of their person. Let's reveal this because everybody, for the most part in the crowd, uh, they only know the person or they knew the person as a child or from college, or they know nothing about the military.
Sure.
And when you start thinking about contributions, and Anita's was just so much fun because Anita has always been kind of a high-end girl,
Oh, yes.
does stuff that nobody else got a chance to do. And I was uh, watching the Dallas play the Redskins. It was a Sunday night game, prime time.
Mm.
And I'm in Fort Bragg. My wife, my son, and I were watching the game. And I said, that's Anita Dixon. They showed something on the 50-yard line. And so I decided to exploit that theme during her because there was a lot of things and everybody could relate to that.
Sure.
That's Anita Dixon. And so
Sure.
that was funny. It's amazing. I see people from friends that I'll run into from her ceremony. And that was what in 15.
Sounds about
Uh,
right.
yeah. And people will say, oh, that's Anita Dixon. And I say, yeah, that's good. I'm glad they remembered it. That was good.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Well, I really want to talk about your new book.
Okay.
One thing I didn't touch on during the introduction, amongst all of your accolades, is you're a published author a few
Mhm.
times over,
Yeah, 3 times. Yeah. Mhm.
and your new book is about to hit the shelves on Veterans Day,
Mhm.
2020. So,
Mhm.
tell me a little bit about the new book. What inspired you to
So
write it?
this is the book. It's entitled uh, Homeland Defense, and my background in history is really on riots and federal intervention,
Mm,
and so I've been endeavoring to write this book for a couple of years because we keep having these occurrences of an American being shot, usually by the police, and it's the video uh, is difficult to reconcile with the audio,
right.
and so and I'm like, okay, well these are uh, occasional occurrences. They're not that frequent. But then I did the research and I realized that since 2013, January of 13 through today, that's 7 years,
Hmm.
police have killed almost 9,000 Americans. Almost
Wow.
9,000. It's not the George Floyd, the Breonna Taylor. It's almost 9,000.
Oh
Now,
my
when
goodness.
you juxtapose that, Hank, against the military has been engaged in the global war on terror since 2001 in
Hmm.
Afghanistan and since 2003 in Iraq. That's 19 years and 17 years.
Hmm.
And American losses and American treasure in those two countries combined is 6,976 people. So police have killed almost 2,000 more Americans than died in kinetic, high intensity warfare. And the question is why? And so my study of riots show that the precipitant or the catalyst to riots in the 60s, 43% of them were the result of heavy-handed police tactics. And
Mm,
now, today, that number is 65%.
my goodness.
And so the question is, what do we do about it? And so in this book, I talk about riots from the Whiskey Rebellion in 1794 through the riots that happened after George Floyd was killed,
Mm,
was murdered, and essentially he was.
sure, sure.
Mostly about the riots after the assassination of Martin Luther King in the 60s, because that was a pivotal point in our history with civil rights
It
and
was.
with the nation coming together with legislation for fair housing, civil rights legislation, equal opportunity legislation, and the Civil Rights Act of 65, voting rights in
Mhm.
65, civil rights in 64, fair housing in 66. And so it was kind of a convergence when King was killed. And King was killed maybe 9 months after the Detroit riots and Newark riots of 1967, where the guard didn't get it right. And take, for example, in Detroit,
Mm,
before the 82nd and 101st came in and active forces came in, uh, the Michigan National Guard had fired more than 150,000 rounds at citizens. Guess how many shots the active forces took when they came in?
my God.
Three, three,
Three.
three. Yeah. And so what you find is that in those days, the guard really represented uh, the mindset or the mores or norms in that locale, because the guard was a part of it.
That's
The
true.
guard was a part of the institution. They were very segregated. They came into Detroit with those same views that most people had of Detroit at that time, and so they used the very weapons that were used in the jungles of Vietnam. They
Mm,
used them on the streets of Detroit, to include tank rounds.
oh my goodness.
And it was fear, it was confusion, it was a lack of discipline, especially fire discipline. And so I look at that, and then I look at the doctrine that kind of followed it. The Army had some phenomenal doctrine that really took a tremendous look into the crowd and what happens in a crowd. And so if we could take this kid, Michael Ferguson,
Mhm.
Michael Brown, who was killed in
In
Ferguson.
Ferguson, right.
Yeah. So if you recall, when Michael was killed, the police cordoned off the area, and they put a blanket or a sheet over Michael's body, which sat in the middle of the street for 6 hours.
And pictures
Uh,
of that and video of that everywhere was just, mm,
and they called it preserving the crime scene, right? Michael was walking in the street when a police officer came by with another guy. He didn't move quickly enough. The police officer said something to him. Michael smarted off, and he essentially wasted him. So when Michael's mother comes over, and there's a crowd starting to assemble, the crowd is what you would call casual. It's not focused. They're just curious. What
sure,
happened? Who
sure.
was that under the sheet? And then and then she started, but that's my baby. I need to hold him. I need to see him. And after that, they realized who it was.
Yeah,
They became expressive, right? And they became cohesive, and then they became aggressive when Michael's stepfather came, because he started getting the crowd riled up. And if you remember, in that time, there was police that cordoned off an area. They had their shields, they had this kind of armored police vehicle that was just kind of doing these circles,
sure.
and it was
Yeah.
really antagonizing the people. And that's when it things went left. And so I talk about the myth of the madding crowd, and what's inside of the crowd, and how you deal with the crowd, and what are some of the remedies for dealing with those crowds, and what civil authorities, what federal authorities, or social control authorities should do, whether or not they should impose a curfew. If you look at the riots here in DC after George Floyd,
Mm,
They had the crowd contained there in Jackson Square,
sure.
and they moved them out, for a photo op with the president, with his Bible upside down and backwards, right? But that was a photo op. I mean,
Sure.
the most basic fundamental right of Americans is the right to assembly for peaceful protest. And they had them contained, and then they dispersed them really amongst the city. Curfew should have been called, a dusk to dawn, because nighttime is nobody's friend. And there's also a mindset that takes over in a crowd, a collectivity, as collective behaviorists would call them, and that is that what I do, what Barry Price does as a part of a crowd, because I believe I'm anonymous in the crowd. So hence,
Mm.
I'm not responsible individually for what I do as a part of a crowd, as the crowd becomes mad and
So
becomes aggressive.
those inhibitions that you, as a rational person, not
That's
in
exactly
that
right.
crowd, not
That's
in that
exactly right.
mob mentality, for lack of a better phrase,
Yep.
those inhibitions go away
They go
because of
away.
the perceived anonymity. So, oh,
That's
okay, well,
exactly right.
everybody else is doing it. No one's going to
Yep.
know it's me. I'm just going to, this is how I'm feeling.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so, bam.
Yep. So in this book, I go from the Whiskey Rebellion through the period was known as the interwar period, which was the period during the Civil War, and followed the Ku Klux Klan and
Mm,
the act known as Posse Comitatus, which precludes the army from using. So interesting. Before
right.
that, there was something known as the Cushing Doctrine, which was, and you'll know this from cowboy and Indian movies. What happens when something happens in a city? What does the marshal raise? A
Ah,
posse.
posse.
Yeah, and a posse. And the Cushing doctrine said that all able-bodied men over the age of 16 could be impressed to service under the marshal as a part of a posse.
Mm,
Well, that meant military people as well. Posse Comitatus really separated the military from that. It made it illegal to search, seize, and detain by military people. And so really the role of the military is as much psychological as it is physical. Nobody really wants to
no,
engage with the military on the streets.
no, no,
Look,
no.
they know what we're capable of. I mean, but that's not and one of the things that has always been a plus in this role domestically for the military is that it never wanted to view itself as an invading alien force. That's
That's
not
true.
what a military does in a democracy. We
No.
don't do domestically what we do abroad. And so I kind of cover from 1794 through the Civil War, through the pre First World War with the military intelligence division coming up with something known as
Mm,
War Plan White, which was what we would do domestically through the riots during the Second World War. We had lots of racial riots in the United States, and many black on white crime, white on black crime,
mm,
soldiers on soldiers, because they weren't welcomed in a lot of these places to what the army called the Negro problem, which was how do you bring them into the army during the Second World War? How do you train them? And so they decided that let's put them out in Iowa and in Idaho or
mm.
Arizona, where the country is really not out there yet, and so nobody would have to really be worried about racial interactions. And through the Detroit riots, I talk about Eisenhower and the integration of Central High School. I go through Detroit. I go through the Washington, D.C. riots after King's assassination.
Mhm.
I talk about Kent State and the lessons that the Army had learned, that the Guard still hadn't learned in Kent State, actually even solve why they fired at Kent State. From looking at the pictures,
Hmm.
it's very apparent to me that they fired upon those students because their leader fired first. He had a 45, and you could see that the upper receiver of his 45 is locked to the back. It only gets that
Sure.
way when you've
When
expended
you,
all the
yep,
ammunition.
when you fire it,
And
and yeah.
exactly. So we
Mm.
go through that. We go through the Rodney King, the post Rodney King trial verdict riots, and then we
Oh,
come
yes.
up to today, and we really entertain some questions that are topics of now, Hank. Questions like, what are the president's authorities under the Insurrection Act? And he's saying, well, I can do whatever I want to do, and that's not true.
That's not true
No,
at all.
no, it's not true at all. There is a formal application process that occurs, you know, between the president's duties and the state governor's duties. And if the government of the state and those locales, are still functional, then the president can only respond to an application after they have exhausted all of their resources. And then he has to make an announcement to cease and desist and disperse, and then it's followed by the employment of federal troops.
Yeah, it's
But
a very deliberate
very
process
deliberate. Yeah.
for a reason.
For various, yeah, yeah. Now, I would tell you that there was a provision that was added in the National Defense Authorization Act of 2007, because what most people won't know that uh, President George W. Bush
Mhm.
was criticized for flying over New Orleans or Louisiana during Hurricane Katrina and
Right.
not landing. He didn't land because there was no request by the governor. The mayor of New Orleans had Nagin had requested federal intervention, but the governor wouldn't. She was playing politics,
Right.
and so he couldn't have sent forces in until there was an application. When the application came, he absolutely did that. Because of that, to try to preclude that politic piece, they added to the National Defense Authorization Act of 2007 a provision that would allow the president to do that, and all 50 governors balked at it, and so they took it out in,
Ah,
in 2008. And so the process is what it was. There has to be an application from the
sure.
state. The state has to exhaust all of its resources, uh, and then the president issues an order to decease, disperse, um, and then he can send in
Sure.
forces. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a process that I think the vast majority of Americans don't understand how that works.
right.
They'll see something on a tweet and just take it for granted that that's the God's honest truth,
Yeah,
or that's the way it is.
yeah.
But it's not the case. There is a
And a
process.
lot of times they'll conclude that's the way it should be,
Right.
and the reality is, we've done a phenomenal job as a country. I mean, uh, many will argue that the major focus of our American Civil War was really about states' rights, where the federal government was impugning on the states' rights. And so uh, we take very seriously as Americans the right, of those states. And so uh, they're intact. And so that's what I talk about. And then I even uh, I even wrote about, I mean, because I've been writing this book for a couple of years. And was going to publish it in 2018, and had a deal with a university press, and my agent didn't like it. She felt that it was all about the press. Press would get all the benefit, and then they would own the rights to my research,
Uh,
and she said, no,
no, no,
don't
no.
do that. And so it took another 2 years, but in 18, I actually predicted a something very akin to the Arab Spring, where you would have all of these cities that would explode and ask for a change and have demands to the government. And we saw that really after this George Floyd predicament. And I tell you what's most uh, challenging for me, and what was hardest thing in writing this book, is that I absolutely revere, respect the presidency, the
Absolutely.
president, and law enforcement folk.
Yes.
But I also felt compelled to tell the rest of the story, that number that we see. I mean, so if I told you that 286 people, 266 people have been killed by police since George Floyd on May 24th. Would you find that alarming? You know,
Just a bit.
and in an age with body cams by police, with everybody armed with these things,
Absolutely.
uh, it hasn't gotten any better. And the tough part is that most uh, most of the offenses are misdemeanors. And so, should somebody die for an improper lane change? Should somebody die after, if they had a weapon and they threw the knife at the police? Well, you're not armed anymore. And then you shoot them 16 times. What happens if police just said, we made a mistake? Like, I could look at the situation in Waukegan, Wisconsin, where Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back.
Mhm.
The officer had his gun drawn. He grabbed him in the back and he was pulling him. He had his finger inside the trigger guard, and I guarantee you he didn't intend to shoot him 7 times. He
No,
just had his finger and he pulled, But we teach in the Army to keep your finger outside the trigger
outside.
guard until you're ready to fire. And so that shouldn't have happened. But we have to find ways to de-escalate, and find ways to lessen the temperature, And I tell you that my study of Los Angeles, which Los Angeles really was and I interviewed Daryl Gates and interviewed the leadership
Hmm.
of the LAPD in 1995. And what's interesting is that LA really moved to this paramilitary policing model, with police with the ninja suits on,
That's right.
ready to open the can of whoop, the rest of it,
Oh, sure, sure.
and SWAT, special weapons and tactics. LA introduced that because their
Yes, they did.
focus was crime fighting versus crime prevention.
Yeah.
Now, I tell you, as a warrior, when I go down range and I got my full battle rattle on, man, I'm in a different mindset
It's
than I
true.
am than when I'm just like this.
That's
And
very
so,
true.
so I think that we got to get back to crime prevention versus necessarily crime fighting. And oh, by the way, society has to play a role because in most of the cases that there has been escalation by the police, the individual that faced punishment, they really played a part, in their own demise in,
Sure,
in in
sure.
in many of the cases, if not most of them. And so we just got to find a way to bring the temperature down and to gain greater trust. You see uh, stories every day. I remember a police officer who I don't know where she was, but a man was on a wheelchair and the wheel got caught in the train
In
track.
the railroad tracks. Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
she dove and saved that man's life, or police going into burning cars. I mean, these things happen every day too,
Sure. Absolutely, they
and
do.
but I'm talking about riots, and so unfortunately I don't get to talk about that,
Sure.
but but that's one we just have to find a way to bring the temperature down. And so I
Well,
talk.
I totally agree with you. And I think a big part of this, and I am never one, because, 31 years dealing with the media, I'm never one to say, oh, it's the media's fault.
Yeah.
They do carry some responsibility,
Yeah.
but what's going to get covered more? There was a period of time, many news outlets tried this. It's been tried over the decades.
Mm.
Let's not cover the tragedies. Let's cover just good news and see what happens. Nobody tunes in.
It's not sexy. Yeah, it's not sexy.
Nobody reads
Yeah.
that article.
Right.
Nobody clicks that headline.
Mm-hmm.
People will go for the train wreck every darn time.
Every time. Yeah.
Every time. And so, and you're right, there has to be a balance that gets struck.
Mm-hmm.
It's when they say, dog bites man, that's not going to get covered.
Yeah.
Because that's normal. That's, when a police officer saves the man in the wheelchair on the railroad tracks, that's probably above and beyond. That deserves some coverage.
Yeah.
But, for some of the other ordinary run-of-the-mill day-to-day heroic things that police officers do, we just kind of expect them to do that. We expect them to do their job. Now, when man bites dog, when something goes sideways that's not supposed to happen, when a police officer, it appears on video that they have murdered someone in cold blood, a knee on the neck, a chokehold of some sort. There's where the coverage is going to go. Why? Because the news agencies know people are going to watch that.
They're going to watch that.
Tune into that. They're going to read that. They're going to scroll through on their phone. And so that's also part of the problem. Do we need
in the 24-hour news cycle now that you have to stay, because you want people to stay engaged. Yeah.
How do you stay relevant as a news organization in the 24-hour news cycle? It's not even the 24-hour news cycle. It's the 1-hour news cycle. Because you're looking at social media and people are posting, misinformation, half the story, no context. They're posting something that people take as news. Then you have the outsiders that, like we just found Iran was trying to, butt into our electoral process this past, week. So you have all of this happening. Yeah. And as a legitimate news organization, how do you compete with that? How do you stay relevant? Because you're still trying to get viewers. You're still trying to get readers. And I'd love to see more positive stories of police accomplishments out there, because they are there.
They're there every day. I mean, they truly are heroes.
But the numbers that you cite also don't lie.
No, they don't.
When you compare, like you did, or our operations in Iraq, our operations in Afghanistan, more than double the same time period that you studied, from 2013 till now versus 2001 to now, and the numbers eclipse the combat deaths. Yeah, that's numbers of Americans in our country. Exactly. Yeah, there's something going on there, and that has to be looked at.
Yeah, and here's a piece that I tell you is that, and many would they want to make it, racial to make it more juicy, but 44% of the people that were killed are Caucasian, 25% are African American, 17% are Hispanic or Latino. And so those numbers are show that it's wider, and when you say we're in a country of 340 million people, 9,000 doesn't seem that large, but in a modern democracy, and only 8.6% of those killed are declared to be good shoots. There's something wrong.
Something definitely wrong, and that's got to be looked at, and that's got to be fixed. Yeah, I completely agree, sir. Absolutely, 100%. Well, I'm definitely going to order your book. We need to have one of our lunches again.
Yeah, we do.
Because we were doing them around once a quarter, because I need to get my autograph in that book.
Yeah, and COVID jumped in, but I tell you that Hank, I need to see you, because the piece that it's a refresh. It's a hit the refresh button for me.
It is for me too.
Let's plan on something before Thanksgiving. We can have lunch.
I'm totally down with that, sir. I'm totally down with that. I'm looking forward to that. And I really can't wait to read the book. it's a topic, and I don't know if you know this, it's a topic that's very, very near and dear to me, and I follow it very closely. I don't post a lot about it, but I have
Mhm.
some very strong opinions about it.
So. Well,
Um,
I think if we start the dialogue and we start the respectful dialogue, I think
yes,
that we can, when we, when things are brought to light, that's when we can solve it, and, all of these are, and I tell you something I didn't look at that would be interesting is other law enforcement agencies like the DEA, ATF, FBI.
sure.
I wonder, they seem to be in a lot more dire situations. I wonder what their challenges are, what the rates would be of shoots that they would have, and I'll see if I can find that data. That would
That's
be a very
worthwhile.
interesting
No,
point
that would
to
be
see if
worthwhile to
different
look
law
into.
enforcement agencies have different friction points or different levels of violence, or why is it less?
Sure.
Would it be less if it is less when they are dealing with some no stuff thugs, no stuff people who murder for a living, for sport, it'd be very interesting to see what their numbers would show.
No, I'd be interested in taking a look at that. That'll be a sequel to your book.
That's the one. That's the next one.
That is awesome. Well,
Yeah, and the
I
book is called Homeland Defense: Civil Unrest and Federal Intervention within the United States, and the forward is by General H.R. McMaster.
oh, no kidding.
Yeah, mhm.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, congratulations on the book. And
I appreciate
I'm
it,
very, very excited for you. You know how much I love you. You know how much I
and
respect
and
you.
I love you more. I think we have a mutual affection society with one another. Yeah.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. I'll close with a more recent story between you and I. We've talked a little bit about our history, and I always like to end on a high note. But I just got to thank you because, I bought this motorcycle 2 years and 8 months after a near fatal crash. I died twice, was resuscitated twice. And I remember vaguely texting you from the
I
hospital.
do. Exactly.
It's like,
Exactly.
I mean, I mean, just to set the stage for folks, you had already left the Pentagon. You were down in Georgia.
No, I was in
No,
North
wait,
Carolina,
North
Bragg.
Carolina.
Yeah. Hmm.
You'd already departed. You hadn't been my boss for a long time.
Hmm.
And for whatever reason, I don't know if it was drug induced or what, but I felt like I needed to tell you what was
Yeah.
happening with
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Like, sure, motorcycle accident, I'm in the hospital, but I'm okay.
Well, see, it was right around the time because we were talking about your promotion. Because I was going to try to make it to your promotion. You're going
That's
to get
right.
promoted.
That's
I
right.
think you either got promoted right before it or it was delayed
I
because of
had,
the.
so I had applied for the position. I'd been referred for the position, was pretty sure I was going to get the position. And I gave you a heads up. I was like,
Yeah.
hey, this is happening.
Yeah.
I don't know when it's going to be, but I want to make sure that you're invited.
Hmm.
Because I was going to do. It's rare that you see a civilian promotion at the Pentagon. There's a reason I did it, because let's face it, I went further up the ladder than even I thought I was going to,
Hmm.
much less a lot of others. But that's why I did it, to thank everybody that supported me along the way, which is why I contacted you about that. And then boom, the crash happened, and you responded right away. You say, hey, I'm in North Carolina, I can't come see you, but stay off motorcycles.
That's right. That's right.
I
That's
still
right.
have the text.
Yeah.
Like, stay off motorcycles, the damn things will kill you.
Yep.
And
Yep.
especially in this area. And so I remember that. And then for about a year, I did my recovery and all of this, and I never really thought about writing again. I've been writing since I'm 9 years old. And so I posted this picture a few days ago on my Facebook of this new motorcycle I bought, because I finally was like, you know what? I miss it. I really got to get back out there. If anything, to at least write it one more time and leave on my terms, to face that fear that I had
Mm.
and leave on my terms. And so I'm I open up my messenger. I'm like, oh, General Price sent me a message. And sure enough, the heck are you doing? Get rid of that motorcycle. What are you doing?
That's right.
And I was getting
That's
ready
right.
to respond to you. Boom, there goes the phone.
Yep.
And I was like, I saw your name pop up on the caller ID. I was like, oh, he's going to let me have it.
Yep. Yep.
He is going to
Yep.
let me have it.
Yep. Yep.
But see,
Yep.
that's somebody who cares.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
Well, and I want to tell you something and I was surprised at your response when I asked you a very specific question, um, because I saw all that you went through to gain custody of your daughter, and I'm like, man, and you could have been out, you know. This was when she was getting ready to go to college too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. She was
yeah.
getting ready to graduate high school and
High
go on to
school, yeah,
college.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, so I thought I knew the answer to the question before I asked it, and which I should have known better. So I asked, what does Lindy have to say about this? And you respond,
She thinks it's cool.
I'm like, damn, that wasn't what I was expecting.
Yeah,
That wasn't what I was expecting.
I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting that either, to be honest. I really thought that I knew you were going to say something. I knew that Chris Luke was going to say something. Wasn't sure about General Rampy. She
Mm,
hasn't said anything yet, but she did like one of my photos. So I
okay.
don't know if that's a supportive thing
Okay.
or if that's yeah, I'm letting you know I'm watching you.
Yeah.
Why are
Yeah.
you doing this?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, Lindy was like, no, I think it's cool. And then she said, fun was, but I say all that to say thank you for being in my life and just thank you for caring. Thank you for continuing to be an inspirational role model and for the leadership that you provide, even though you're long since retired, you've moved on to other ventures, but you're still projecting, the best example of leadership that I can think of. Do you want to talk about your new company real quick, like 5-minute pitch? What are you
Yeah.
doing now?
Well, it's I'm the president and CEO of an organization called the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America,
Right.
also known as CADCA.
CADCA.
Yeah, and it's been around for 30 years. I'm replacing a phenomenal a mentor of mine, a man who I love like he's my father, a retired Major General Art Dean.
Mhm.
And
Know him
I'm
well.
replacing General Dean, and huge shoes to fill. I mean, he just is the quintessence of the leader, caring, observant, detailed. He's everything that I want to be when I grow up. And so it's been a phenomenal transition. The CATCA builds these multi-sectored 12 sectors, parents, kids serving organizations, mental health organizations, politicians, media, clergy, law enforcement,
Mhm.
12 sectors. And we teach them essentially a master's level of education of how to
Wow.
work together and work collaboratively, in bringing their own identity into this coalition so that they can achieve community level, population level change in their communities. Our focus is to build safe, healthy, and drug-free communities globally. And so we have over 5,000 in the United States and then 400 on 5 continents abroad. And so it's been a remarkable organization, and it's been, when they say that if you love what you do, you'll never work another day in your life.
True.
I love what I do, and
That's
so
amazing.
I look forward to Monday.
Absolutely. Well, you're
Yeah,
doing God's work, and I'm just proud of you for doing that. When generals leave me, I always am curious as to what they're going to do. Are they going to be a board member somewhere? a CEO? What are they going to do? And when I saw that you were doing that, to me, that was just a natural progression from what you were already doing, because aside from sexual assault prevention, suicide prevention, we had drug and alcohol prevention
Exactly.
too.
Exactly.
I was like, oh, that's
Exactly.
the perfect fit for him. You know, he's got excellent insight on that. So I'm just proud of you. Really, really happy for you.
Well, I
Uh,
appreciate it, Hank.
Congratulations on the book. Congratulations on CADCA, and we'll do lunch really soon.
For sure. And thanks for having me on today.
And thank you all for watching.
And be careful on that motorcycle.